Before I get into this review, I have to say the initial set of posters for this movie were just trash. I don't know what happened. The Photoshop looked really bad. The characters were like leaning on the edges of the frame, but you didn't really know what they were leaning on. I mean, it didn't really look like a professional movie poster. It kind of looked fan made. I don't know what happened, but here we are. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the 9th film from director Quentin Tarantino. This one stars Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. This movie takes place in the late 60s and centers around 3 different characters: Rick Dalton, Cliff Booth, and Sharon Tate. 2 of these characters are actually fictional, but Sharon Tate is, of course, a real person. Rick Dalton, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, is an actor who believes that he's fading away in popularity and he's trying to find the next big thing to get him back on the map. Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt, is his stuntman and right-hand man who helps him with other things, like getting his life together. And then we have Sharon Tate, played by Margot Robbie, who is, again, famous actress, and you see her life as she's living in Hollywood. So, believe it or not, this is actually my first Tarantino film in theaters. I don't know, I just never got around to seeing them in theaters. I mean, of course, there was Hateful Eight and Django Unchained more recently, but I just never got around to seeing them in theaters. So this is my first Tarantino movie in theaters, and it was an interesting experience. This movie is very unconventional in the storytelling, in the structure, in the way it's shot. So I think there's going to be a group of people that really love it, and a group of people that may not care for it as much. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood offers a lot. We have great characters, an interesting setting, interesting story structure. So there's a lot to appreciate in this movie. I don't think it was perfect, but I did appreciate it for what it was. So what worked? First and foremost, this movie looked great. From the colors to the cinematography to the costumes, I think Tarantino definitely nailed it with the 60s vibe, and it just felt like a very fleshed out environment. It felt like you were actually transported to this era of history. And one thing I liked that he did a lot in this movie was putting the camera in the car, and so when characters were driving around, you see the camera kind of moving around with them. I thought that was a very interesting shot choice that he did. And then there's a lot of playing with time in this and reality, which I wasn't expecting. And so there's some parts where it'll say, this is happening, and then it'll cut away and say, no, it's actually like this. And I thought that was an interesting way of telling the story so that it kind of keeps you interested and keeps you invested. Another great thing about this movie was the performances. Leonardo DiCaprio, I don't think has ever given a bad performance, at least that I have seen. Every movie that he's in, he absolutely kills it, and I think he did great as this actor who's kind of coming to terms with how he might be fading out of popularity and like how he's reacting to that. I thought he did a great job with that. And then there's Brad Pitt as Cliff Booth. I think he also did a great job. Not only did he do well with the character moments, he also did well with the action scenes because it's a Tarantino movie, so of course there's action. And a lot of fights center around him. I think that's really great. And then I also liked his interactions with a certain group of characters, no spoilers, that I think really helped give the movie some extra action and tension and even comedy. And so I think both DiCaprio and Pitt together in a great duo that helped really carry this movie and help give it that extra push. Margot Robbie did well as Sharon Tate. Very wholesome character in this movie. I think she gave us some of the sweeter moments of this movie, because if you know the history of Sharon Tate, then you know it doesn't end well for her, but they give you a lot of nice character moments, a lot of moments where we remember Sharon Tate as the actress, not as the victim of a very, very terrible crime. And so we get to just enjoy her as a person. You get to just see what she was like. Some other performances that stood out to me were Austin Butler. I'm not going to say who he was playing because I feel like that would be a spoiler if you know your history, but I think he killed it in this role. Very different than what I've seen him do in the past. Growing up, I remember seeing him on Nickelodeon, and seeing him in this role was very different, but I appreciated it, and I think he did really, really great. Also, there is Mike Moe playing Bruce Lee. This was awesome. It felt like Bruce Lee was actually in this movie. I think he nailed the performance, especially with the martial arts too. He even made the noises like Bruce Lee used to make, like, whoa! Like, he did an awesome job. I think he was also one of the standouts in this movie. And there's Julia Butters, who plays a little girl that plays alongside DiCaprio in a movie within the movie. And I thought she was also a great standout. She played a really articulate little girl, and I thought she played well off of DiCaprio. So I hope to see her in more movies, because I feel like she definitely has the potential to become like a big star in the future. And what didn't work? Now, before I get into these are things that didn't work for me, which usually is what I'm talking about when I say it didn't work. But I think these are things that other people may appreciate more. I just didn't feel it as much. One of those things being some of the pacing. I think this structure is more of like a day in the life kind of thing, right? Where you're seeing the characters going about their day. And to some points that is interesting, but there are other parts where I think it moves a little too slow for my taste. But then by the end of the movie, it does all tie together in an interesting way. So I, again, understand why he did it that way. But I do think there could have been some time cut out of this movie, just a little bit. And I think it would have been fine. The other thing is, again, because it's a Tarantino movie, there is a weird emphasis on feet. Like, the way he frames certain shots, it's like a third of the screen is a woman's feet, like right there. And sometimes it's like, I don't know why, like of course your eye is drawn to it because like the biggest thing on the screen, but you're just like, why are there these people's feet in my face? I don't understand it. And so for me, that was kind of weird. I mean, I could look past it. It didn't ruin the movie for me, but it did stand out. Like, why am I seeing these people's feet so much? I don't know. It's Tarantino. The verdict. If you're a fan of Tarantino, DiCaprio, Pitt, all of them, then you will probably love this movie. Also, if you are a fan of this era of Hollywood, if you studied film, if you're just familiar with the history, then I think you will also appreciate this movie. I personally thought this movie was fine. I didn't love it, and I didn't hate it. I appreciated it for what it was, but ultimately the pacing kind of killed it for me because it just seemed for a while that it wasn't really going anywhere. If you're not a fan of slow burns, you may not appreciate or enjoy this movie as much because it does move at a very slow but consistent pace. So if that's not your thing, then you might not like it as much. But I think this movie does offer great performances, interesting storytelling, great action, and it's funny. So if you love all those things, then definitely go see it. Did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Let me know what you thought down in the comments. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. I will see you in the next one.